Good afternoon. You joined Connect and Avella in October, which is, funnily enough, Cybersecurity Month, to talk about both our partnership and how you deal as a business with shadow AI. So, Tom, if we could start by you introducing yourself and tell us a bit about Avella and the partnership with Connect, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Stephen. Hello, everyone. So my name is Tom Pepper. I'm a partner of Avella. We're a specialist cyber and AI security organization. So we provide advisory services to organizations as well as managed services, incident response capability and physical security as well. In terms of the partnership with Connect, so we've been working as Connect's security partner for a number of years. And most recently, we've combined on the AI advisory capabilities within Connect, so supporting Connect's clients in their AI adoption journey. I have a particular interesting insight into AI because I'm also working as the security lead at the UK's AI Security Institute, which is the world's largest state-backed organisation dedicated to AI safety and AI security. So very much at the coalface of AI security and AI safety.
Fantastic. So you're the man to come to for the inside track.
Apparently so.
Excellent. So, Tom, if I can ask the first question, as for people joining this discussion, shadow AI, can you tell us a bit about what it is and why it's important to businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about shadow AI, it's very much in the same theme as what we used to call shadow IT, whereby organizations are very much aware that staff are utilizing AI tools and technologies. It's almost impossible to block every possible browser-based AI model within an organization. And what we're seeing now is the amount of people that are using shadow AI without the monitoring that is taking place at a central location. So the IT teams don't have full visibility of the types of prompts that are being put into these AI models. And they're effectively using these tools outside of governance frameworks. And that's where the risk starts to slip in. I mean, using AI is born out of good intentions. You know, the workforce are looking for improved speed, productivity, etc. But what we need to be careful of is that without the kind of governance and oversight, it does create these additional risks around potential data leakage, bias, compliance gaps, etc.
Okay, thank you. So for me as a user, me logging into, say, ChatGPT into my own personal account and asking a very basic question about what is ISIP, global ISIP, or tell me something about one of our competitors, is that acceptable to a business, or should they have like wariness around the way that they do that?
I think it's all about risk management. I think if you're using a basic ChatGPT account, for example, the basic plan on ChatGPT means that all of your data that you are inputting to ChatGPT is going back to the Frontier AI lab, and that information is then being trained on to improve those models in the future. Now, whilst a simple request like, I don't know, write me a poem or whatever it might be, isn't considered a large risk, if you're building up a picture of that particular user and how they operate and how they engage with ChatGPT, that's when we can start to see an aggregation of risk, in that what they're doing is building up a picture of all of this information that you've entered into the prompt. And actually, that's when it starts to get a little bit more sensitive. And so when we then move into kind of corporate owned accounts, for example, for ChatGPT, you can switch off the data retention and being trained on that particular data. So there are more secure ways of using it, but ultimately the organization needs to have visibility and making sure that there isn't that data exfiltration risk or data sensitivity, leakage, etc. So it's making sure that your organization has a good understanding of the tools that are being used from an AI perspective and the types of material that is being inputted into those prompts.
Okay. So as a business, any business indeed, has gone from not understanding what AI is in purposes for work to now that people are using it in their home lives. So how do you go from the world of nothing to the world of pretty much everything? Where are the gaps in governance? Because everyone must be in the same position. How do we approach this? We can't walk away from it because it's the future, but we're in fear of it, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, Stephen, because I think every organization is racing for AI adoption. There are mandates from the board saying we need to utilize AI in our organization. But actually what's being missed is this step of policy and monitoring and governance around that new technology. And what we're seeing with AI, it's a different type of attack surface. It's not like a traditional piece of software that you're bringing into your organization. And because there is such a race for adoption of AI across an organization, actually there is very much a kind of lack of understanding of what that risk looks like to the organization. And so I think the first step is always policy, making sure that the workforce understand what that particular organization's policy is on the usage of AI, what types of data can be used on those particular models, what models are being used in the organization, what tools do they interact with, and how they can be used effectively. And that's a really interesting, really important point to start with, because that policy can't be too restrictive, because otherwise staff may try to use a different method for utilizing AI, using it on their personal device, for example. So you have to balance that risk with how useful that particular tool is. I think there's also the monitoring aspect. There are, a number of organizations that are developing the ability to monitor the use of AI. So making sure that, your central IT team, for example, understands what tools your users are using. But again, that's making sure that it's not too restrictive. If you're blocking every usage of a browser-based AI GPT tool, for example, again, people are going to try and subvert those policies. So it's about education and making sure that those monitoring tools provide a prompt, for example, that says, are you sure you want to submit this information? Because don't forget, it's not like your traditional data loss prevention, where they can identify structured data like a credit card number, for example. What you're putting into these prompts is, is human language. And actually you can decipher from a prompt that whole prompt may be sensitive and therefore needs to be flagged as being a potential breach of policy. And so making sure that you've got that monitoring capability is key. And then finally, I think it's about executive ownership. I think at the moment, there is very much an executive drive to adopt. But actually, how much does the board understand what risks they're introducing if they don't put this policy and governance wrapper around the usage of AI? So it's the same with any other introduction of software. You need to be able to understand what data the AI tool has got access to. So when we're talking about agentic AI, do they have access to corporate records? Do they have a higher level of privilege? Are they able to conduct tool activities that actually require a human to check that they're doing it correctly, for example? And so all that understanding needs to be put as a wrapper, and the executive ownership needs to make sure that they understand the risks associated with it.
Okay, so it's really creating I suppose, a level of trust rather than surveillance, and I suppose that's a bit of a fine balance, really, isn't it, as a business, to say we still trust you as an employee, and we want you to embrace it, but we just want you to, I suppose, work carefully and within the guardrails of what our business wants to use AI for.
Exactly, and I think that's the way that we're going to kind of balance this. I think, there's absolutely no way that an organization can block every possible AI model. There are so many that are available on the open internet. And so, that is a constant challenge for IT teams to block those. And so it is that education piece. It's making sure that you understand what's being used, you understand what data is being inputted into those prompts, and actually celebrating the opportunity that AI can bring. The guardrails should be visible. It should be explained in plain language. The users should be able to understand what is the best practice or the policy for usage of AI, and making sure that you've got that kind of communication loop with your staff as well. Hearing from your staff what tools they find that they need to use that they don't have access to, and making sure that you've got visibility of those, and putting that wrapper, like you said, without the kind of heavy-handed surveillance wrapped around it.
Sure. I suppose, looking at this from my point of view, I look at companies such as Air Canada and DPD, where there's, I suppose, horror stories where they've given incorrect data, or they've sworn and got into an argument with the end client. As a business, as Avella, where do you see your business coming in to say, this is where we can support you to in effect allow you to give your clients that freedom, but not stop, let's call it, productivity and innovation within your business?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's we get involved in kind of multiple stages in the life cycle. There was a code of practice that was released by the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology back in January. And it's got some really useful guidance around how every stage in the AI adoption life cycle or supply chain has a responsibility for making sure that they are using and adopting AI securely. So right from the developers of the AI tool, need to make sure that they've got appropriate guardrails in place. But actually, you as a user of an AI tool also needs to make sure that you've got good understanding of what those guardrails look like. And so it is about balancing the ability for users to be able to use it in a productive way, but also making sure that you're not opening up your organization to any additional risk. And I think, it's about understanding, like I said before, the tools that it's got access to, the data that it's got access to, and actually testing those agentic AI models, for example, before they go into production, and making sure that they don't have any unnecessary access that they need. And so it's about testing it, monitoring it, and making sure you've got that policy wrapper around it.
Sure. I mean, I'm thinking of a practical example is that the clients that I work with myself, we will get caught up in brainstorming sessions and we'll come up with some fairly wacky use cases for build, anything from, the way that you can access test results to booking appointments to more crazy things that clients come up with. Where do you see the breakdown from where build stops and governance starts? Do they overlap, or do you see them as two very separate entities that need to almost police each other?
Yeah, I mean, they have to overlap. You have to have that overarching governance from the start. You need to make sure that you're understanding what that use case is, and what data is going to access as part of that AI adoption journey. Making sure that there are guardrails built in from the start. So rather than bolting on, it's the same overarching principle of security, making sure that it's secure by design, as opposed to bolted on the end because you forgot about it and that's something that you need to do at the end. Making sure that you've included and considered security right from the outset is imperative, and making sure that you've got that governance wrapper. So there are those checks as it goes through that build life cycle to ensure that the whole journey is built from a security perspective.
Sure. And I'm just thinking that I suppose as a business, you would like to be able to really measure the effectiveness, and you don't really want to measure that in how many legal cases you haven't had. So is there any other ways that you can measure this in tangible terms, or is it more a case of actually just making sure you keep yourself very secure from the start?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think from a kind of incident perspective, I suppose we're very much at the early phases of cyber incidents associated with AI, and I think we're only very much at the early curve of that. And I think that's going to be a really good judgment as to all of this AI adoption that's happening now. We might see it in 6, 12, 18 months time, where actually they're being compromised, and we're kind of uncovering the vulnerabilities of that process. And so I think it's about making sure that you've got that control, making sure that you've got that governance, and making sure that you're open with your users, making sure that the users have an appropriate use case, making sure that the security team have been involved from the outset, making sure that you understand the risks, but also understanding what the benefits and opportunities of AI might be.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that we have quite a lot of contact centers as a collective partnership. Some of them are building in-house and saying, no, we've got this, we've got the right skills. Others very much come to us and say, what should we do? You give us consultative approach and build and deploy. What's your thoughts? Where's the pros and cons between taking it in-house versus approaching, say, an Avella and Connect and looking at the security and the build of a chatbot in your business?
Yeah, it's a really valid point. I mean, I think we're very much again at the early curve of in-house development for AI tools. I think there's a lot of specialist organizations out there. But even on kind of engaging with third parties, it's making sure that you've done your due diligence on that particular tool. Just because it is AI enabled and it says it's going to I don't know, improve productivity by 50% or whatever it might be, you still have a responsibility, as you would with any other tool or technology that you're bringing into your business, to make sure that actually, do they understand the, have they considered the risks associated with the AI aspects of their platform? And I think, whether you're building it in-house or procuring a third-party tool, I think it's making sure that you understand what additional risks you might be including by incorporating AI. And I think, everything in business is risk, isn't it? It's about understanding what the risks are. Do you accept that risk? Have you got appropriate mitigations in place? But it's about considering actually what is your data when you're putting it into that AI tool or technology or agentic AI, whatever it might be. Where is that data going, and what does that model have access to? And that's what you need to understand before you kind of switch it onto production.
Perfect. I see. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. All right. So I own a bakery, for example, and I've downloaded some AI software, and I've made myself a fairly basic bot which will take orders, answer basic questions to my business. And I'm just going to, it looks like it works, and I'm rolling it out Monday. Sunday night, I'm going to give you a call. Tom, what advice can you give me? If I come to you, what would be the first steps that you would be giving me to say, proceed with caution, implement these steps, or would you say take a step back and let's look at this in a bit more detail? Because I think a lot of clients are, from what I can see, they have a CEO screaming at them saying, we need Gen AI, give me Gen AI tomorrow because our business needs it. They don't really care what it looks like. They just want to be seen to using generative AI. So what would be the advice you'd be giving?
I think, I know, for fear of repeating myself, I think it's about understanding the risk that chatbot is bringing to your business. Is it a chatbot that is processing potentially sensitive or personal data? For a bakery, possibly not, maybe some payment information, but also understanding what is that data flow from a customer typing into that chatbot. Where is that data going? Is it sitting in your servers and therefore you've got control over it, or is it pinging back to a DeepSeek server in China and therefore that's increasing the risk? And so it's really about understanding where your data is flowing from the point of that chatbot, and making sure that you understand that there is a potential risk, but you've got mitigations around it. That it only has access to a certain amount of data, and therefore you're not worried about sensitive data leakage, for example. And so it's about breaking down that particular tool and really understanding what it can do, how it can impact your customers. If that comes back with a response that could jeopardize the reputation of your bakery, then that's an additional risk that you need to consider. So it's not just about how that tool is configured. It's about what are the potential outputs. We understand from AI that hallucinations are possible. We understand that there could be a risk to society in terms of persuasion, in terms of revealing potentially sensitive information. And so have all of those things been considered? Is it ethical? Is it, is it working alongside a kind of regulatory framework? So all those things, as you would with any new technology, you need to consider. But what we're talking about here is the potential for a bit of a lack of control as to what comes back to you, which we can't really control. There is an understanding that all of these models will have a prompt injection vulnerability. So there will always be some way that you can type a combination of phrases that might break the guardrails and therefore provide you potentially sensitive information. You can't really prevent against that, but you can put that security wrapper around it to give you the confidence that actually, if that does happen, you've got appropriate tools to close it down, to switch it off, to review the content that's coming out of the output. So it's about making sure that you've got that kind of defense in depth approach, and you're not just plugging it in and assuming that everything is going to be hunky-dory, that actually you've got a control over it and a management over that particular model.
Fantastic. Well, I think one thing that is certain, Tom, is this isn't going away. So I think what we need to acknowledge is that it is here to stay, and cybersecurity is very much going to play a very significant role in this adoption. Tom, appreciate your time. Thank you. And no doubt we will speak more on this subject. Thank you. Have a good day.